This is about the states trying to get the economy moving again as quickly as possible, but also in the safest way that it can do so. We know that the states are at different stages in the territories when it comes to the caseloads. As you heard from the New South Wales Premier there, for her, it's not necessarily going to be able to move rapidly on this restriction relief when other places like the Northern Territory, we know, have already got that timetable in place ahead of National Cabinet to reopen cafes and pubs. I'll take you through what the National Cabinet is considering when it comes to that whole range of restrictions that have been put in place across the Australian economy. When it comes to hospitality, pubs and bars, cafes, restaurants and food courts, all moving to the takeaway business model in order to try and get through to the other side of this. Personal care, things like beauticians, tanning and nail salons, tattoo parlours, massage and day spas. Basically, they have been forced to close their doors because they weren't able to meet this spatial distancing restrictions and stay apart with one another and stop the spread of the virus. Could we see a staged return for that sector? In terms of indoor gatherings, we know religious worship has been remarkably different in this country. Churches forced to stream services online, cinemas and theatres closing their doors altogether, and the toughest restriction, according to the Prime Minister, placing that limit of 10 people at funerals. We know some states are already moving on that restriction ahead of this National Cabinet meeting. And finally, weddings, a maximum of 5. In terms of sport and recreation, gyms and boot camps moving to a whole different business model as they were forced to shut their doors. Public playgrounds and pools also being forced to be closed because they just weren't able to be cleaned up to the right standard. Picnics and sunbaking completely changed across the country. And then finally, that community and elite sport. We know the NRL and AFL have been pushing very publicly to get a certain time frame about when they can return to the field. As for this return to some normality, it is the expectation that this will be done in gradual stages. Here was the Assistant Treasurer, Michael Sukkar, on that this morning.
Into restrictions, I suspect we'll be stepping out of restrictions in a staged way, not too dissimilar to what some of the jurisdictions around the country have already announced. So, I think that sort of staged approach would be sensible.
Laura, it's also understood that the National Cabinet would like to see a 4-week lag between the major changes of restrictions across the country. That will make sure that the health authorities are confident that we are on track of any second wave that could be developing before they further relax the rules.